2001, a fellow named Jason Sorens is a PhD candidate in political science. He wrote an article about a bright idea he had that he noticed the problem that libertarians are very dedicated but too dispersed, and they weren't being effective. And it had been 30 years since the foundation of the Libertarian Party, and we're just banging our heads against a wall. So he did his political science magic and decided that if you could get 20,000 libertarians to concentrate in a low population state, that would be enough. If they were activists, that would be enough to essentially set the agenda. So that was the goal. So we can, if we find a low population state, we can get 20,000 activists to move there, liberty-minded, then we set up our own laboratory and we can essentially do what we want to see our ideas become reality. Part of his plan was to get early endorsements from major libertarian figures, which they were successful at. Walter Williams, in particular, gave a key early endorsement to help the idea catch steam. Claire Wolfe, some of you may know, is a very interesting author, a radical author. LP presidential candidates like Michael Badnarik got on board. Very quickly, they got to 5,000 pledges. What the pledge is, when you sign up, you're not signing up to say, I'm ready to move and this is what I'm going to do. All you're saying is, when we hit the 20,000 goal, then I will make every effort to move within 5 years. That's the pledge. There's no enforcement mechanism, but we hope among our community that we can take people at their word, that if they sign it, that they mean it, and if we reach that goal. And besides the fact, if you've got 20,000 other people that are ready to do it, that becomes very persuasive to you just to be part of that scene. So we reached 5,000 members. That was a milestone where it triggered the selection of a state. There were 10 states under consideration, all around 1 million or less in population. Some states were ruled out, small states like Rhode Island and Hawaii, for being too irreparably statist. And so we were left with states like South Dakota, New Hampshire, Alaska, Montana, Delaware, and the voting commenced. For those of you who are electoral nerds, they used the Condorcet method, but basically it was a numbers game. Very quickly, it appeared that there were two leading contenders, which were Wyoming and New Hampshire. People west of the Mississippi tended to favor Wyoming, and people east of the Mississippi, New Hampshire. Fortunately, on the East Coast, we have superior numbers, so we won. But even since then, some of the people who were diehard Wyoming supporters who visited New Hampshire have come to say, no, I think that was the correct choice, and this is the place, and it always was. So fast forward to, well, hold on, let me go back a point. So we had 5,000 members. We're working our way toward the 20,000 goal, but people started getting anxious. So the first 1,000 program was set up. And that was, the goal was to get 1,000 people to pledge to go ahead and just move. Just make the move, get it started, get a lot of the groundwork in place for the people who are going to come later. That was a success. Today we do have over 1,000 movers, registered movers in state. Overall we have 12,000 pledges. To be honest, the pledges are slower than we expected, but the interesting thing about having the early movers is we've been able to actually just go ahead and get started. Jason Sorens himself has said that based on the results of the first 1,000, he doesn't think the 20,000 number is necessary. If we could get even 5,000 people of the dedication and character that we have of the first 1,000, that would be enough to really be dominant in New Hampshire. So activism in New Hampshire right now, well, first let me say, there's the 1,000 movers is the people who've gone on the website and taken the time to register themselves. And if you know other liberty-minded folks, we don't always do those kinds of things. We're not always filling out the paperwork. So if you want to talk about real numbers of people in our community, we've got the registered people, we have their family members, we have people already in New Hampshire who aren't eligible to register, and New Hampshire has a very strong native liberty culture. So we have a lot of locals that are called Friends of the FSP that are just as active and even more active since the newcomers have arrived. Activism in New Hampshire right now breaks down into 3 general classes. There's political, civil disobedience, and entrepreneurial. First, to talk about political, we're here at a states' rights nullification conference. There are 14 state legislators that are movers with the Free State, or were movers with the Free State. They have had a huge impact so far. The funny thing is that they've started attributing a lot of the pro-liberty legislation that's been passed by native state reps as, oh, there's the Free Staters acting up again. They passed this bill. The Free Stater didn't sponsor it. I mean, they probably voted for it, but it really just came from people in New Hampshire that wanted something that was libertarian. But what they have done is they've helped expand the right of self-defense. The crowning achievement, I would say, is they cut the budget by 11% last year from the general fund, 15% specific, 11% overall, 15% from the general fund. Cut taxes and fees across the board. Didn't raise any taxes last year. Laid off 500 state workers and balanced the budget. Okay, now that hasn't been done at the state level since World War II. What happened last year in New Hampshire? That's huge, and it definitely wouldn't have happened without our influence. And that touches on a broader point. Those of us in the Boswash area, we get, and just in the rest of the country, we get used to swimming against the tide and the discouragement that comes with that. And no matter how dedicated we are, watching the news and seeing that every day new liberties are taken away and our job gets harder and we have another battle we have to fight. Being in New Hampshire, it's the opposite. You feel like the tide is at your back. If you just swim a little harder, we're just going to get there sooner. And the change in mentality and how that affects you as an activist is really hard to describe, and you'll have to really experience it for yourself. But it really changes your whole perspective. It's hope, and not the Obama kind, like the actual kind. So I mean, New Hampshire's not a utopia right now. People think, oh, it's a free state, so then they oh, well, you have bad alcohol laws, Well, yeah, I mean, it's not. If it were a libertopia, we'd all be there already. We would have known about it. The whole country would have moved there. It's a work in progress. What it was a great starting point. It's a place with a great native culture, and it's a place that we think we can have a good impact. Let's see, what else do we have? To New Hampshire's credit, a lot of stuff is handled on the municipal level. So this conference is all about decentralization and getting things back from the federal government to the state level. New Hampshire goes one step further. There's no state income tax. There's no state sales tax. A lot is handled at the town and city level. So it runs through property taxes. And yeah, if you pick a town with a lot of services, your property tax can be high. We chose Portsmouth, and they have a city pool and they have all sorts of luxuries, and the property taxes are high. You can be in Grafton, where there's virtually no property tax, and people keep to their own services and what they want to pay for. But it also means that there's basically no universal mandates on anything. You can work on the town level, and ultimately, if that proves fruitless, you vote with your feet. And it's not so hard to move towns. It's hard to move states. It's certainly hard if we only have 3 options: Mexico, U.S., and Canada. So that's why we're trying to decentralize to the states. But it becomes really easy, and it introduces a lot of competition when you're talking about cities competing with each other for residents. And people do. I mean, a lot of people moved. Portsmouth got too expensive. They moved to Dover, a neighboring town, and Dover's had a big boom, and Portsmouth actually is dealing with that now. They're coming to saying, hey, we're losing businesses to nearby town. We better look at the budget, and that was a major quiver, a major arrow in the quiver of the Association of Portsmouth Taxpayers when they went to the city to ask for cuts. As I mentioned, native New Hampshireites are shockingly libertarian. A lot of them don't even know the word. But when I explain what it is, oh, well, yeah, that's what I am. You know, I never had that experience in Manhattan. That's where I grew up. You know, you get to a point in a conversation where I still to this day, I'm ready to have a fight. And you know, my hair standing on end, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to have my debate now. And they're like, no, that sounds about right. So the story I like to tell is when we were visiting Portsmouth. We were walking down a side street, and it was just me and my wife, and one other guy was on the street, and I was complaining out loud. I said, well, you know, we're going to move all this way to the Free State, and we're moving to the most socialist part of it. You know, and there's all these public services and Democrats, and the other guy on the street turned around and said, actually, we're libertarian here. I didn't know him.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, now the town's responded. It's okay, we can move. And that was just truly a moment where I saw myself living in Portsmouth. Second class of activism, civil disobedience. This originally was concentrated in Keene, which is all the way to the west, and it's picking up in Manchester. And these are people that, for various reasons, choose not to work through the political system. They just choose to live free now, and consequences come what may. And rather than what the expectation is, that they would face increasing legal problems until eventually they were in prison for the rest of their lives, what we found is that they've actually been very successful at rolling back bad laws, legislating through the courts. Some examples, videotaping police. The police in New England in general, and it applies to New Hampshire, they try to use their wiretapping law to say that you can't videotape them when you're being arrested or you have an encounter. They went ahead and did it anyway. It went through the courts, and for the most part, it's been overturned. Essentially, it gets down to this notion that we should all recognize, which is that government at all levels is essentially a house of cards, and they rely on that fear to keep us in line. But when we get together and stand up and start actually asserting our rights, they usually back down. And whether that's on the state level with examples like the Real ID Act, where the states got together and said no, and the federal government said, oh, okay. or at a local level where you know, the first cannabis protest. I'm not a big drug user, but there are people that enjoy that, and it's a victimless crime. They got together and they held these rallies, and yeah, in the first couple times there were arrests and there were legal proceedings. They didn't take the plea deals, which is how these guys get a lot of their convictions. And sure enough, eventually the police decide that they ought to use their resources elsewhere. They don't want to be you know, filling up their court with potheads once a month. So it's been successful. Third class of activism going on is entrepreneurship. Since I moved, I've started a PR marketing firm. Unemployment is below 5%, and you've got this talent pool not only of fellow Free Staters, if you've got a liberty-oriented business like I do, or just in general, if you've got a knowledge-based business. We're not in the boonies. I mean, these are highly educated people in New Hampshire. It's attracted a lot of talent from around the country, even besides the Free State Project. People have, on their own, recognized the merits of living in New Hampshire. And I know several people that work with us now that said, hey, I just ran my own, you know, I did my own spreadsheet, and sure enough, New Hampshire came out on top. So it's a great pool to pull from. And we have enough entrepreneurship that we actually have a club on the Seacoast that has 30-plus members that's only libertarian entrepreneurs. So you know, it's a great support to have that network. The reason it's activism is not only because by offering any service into the market, you're servicing the people around you a lot more than any public servant. But by being successful, you can provide resources to the movement and you promote the FSP. By being a success, you embody the philosophy. And a lot of the people that we look up to, Peter Thiels and Peter Schiff and Ron Paul, and these people are successful in their fields, and it helps to spread the message. So just to give you my own story, as I alluded to, I'm from Manhattan. Lived in Virginia, New Orleans, and Toronto before New Hampshire. We first visited the state in 2008. We saw Keene and Manchester, Concord, and Portsmouth. We kept coming back to Portsmouth. We really sort of fell in love with it. And any free vacation time we had, we were up in Portsmouth. We didn't really connect with the FSP people. We were just enjoying New Hampshire. We went to the local NH Seacoast Liberty meetup and saw those people, and they were very friendly and welcoming, and that had a big impact on us. But we had pretty much made up our mind even before ever meeting a lot of Free Staters that we liked New Hampshire, and there was a place we could see ourselves living. However, when we did meet the Free Staters, then it just added another level. There's a little bit of serendipity. I was at a taping of the Stossel show, and it just happened to be the Free State episode. So it gave me an opportunity to ask a question, a softball question of Chris Lawless, who's the spokesman, and make the project look good, which was nice. And then we went out for drinks afterwards, and he was my first point of contact with FSP Incorporated, if you will. And just from there, we went to PorcFest last year and saw what it was like to spend a week where you really don't have to fraternize with anyone who doesn't respect your individual liberties. Hundreds of people around a functioning mini city where you have vendors, you don't have to go outside for food, people are providing excellent food, you have a place to stay, you've got entertainment, and everyone around you, as far as the eye can see, agrees with you on those fundamental things that we expect everyone to agree on, but they don't. So that sealed the deal, and we moved up in 2 months. We've been there since August and loving it so far. Let's see. Well, it gets to the point that you don't really have to feel like an oddball anymore in your social circle or workplace. We've spent a lot of time like that where we were the one or two people. And I know with the Ron Paul movement, a lot of us feel like we do have a little bit more community, and that's excellent. But magnify that by 100, and that's what it's like to live in the Free State. And even if you're not 100 times more people, the interactions that take place when the community grows, even by one order of magnitude, it's a lot of things that you wouldn't expect, different synergies and opportunities that open up for you. So to quote Kirk McNeil, who's a mover and prominent member of the movement up there, when he was celebrating 3 years in New Hampshire, he said, "I'll never forget move-in day, how we walked into the condo and the landlord got the keys, and walked out to find about a dozen people in the parking lot ready to help us unload. He turned to us and said, 'I thought you guys had never been to New Hampshire before today.' We said, 'We haven't. These people are from the internet.'" And for Claire Wolf's perspective, however we get it, the one thing freedom lovers need is real community, not just the community of web yakking, not just the community of common ideas and ideals, but the web of institutions that serve freedom's goals. And that's what it is. And no matter how many Facebook friends you have, or Twitter contacts, or however you're reaching out nowadays, there's just no replacement for being in the same room like we are today, or being in the same town with people that are fellow activists that are working with you toward a common goal. New Hampshire is now a homeland for libertarians. In some ways, it's always been that, but with the Free State Project, it's even more so. We have a vision for the future. The FSP president, Carla Garicki, likes to call it the Yankee Hong Kong. Another member calls it Silicon Shire. But whatever it is, it's exciting, it's happening, and all we need is you. So what are you waiting for? All right. I'm happy to take questions. Go ahead.
Kind of a compound question. First of all, PorcFest. Fest, how did it get its name? And also you referenced hundreds of people agree on those fundamental things. You were on those fundamental things?
Okay. PorcFest got its name because we love bacon. No, it's the Porcupine Freedom Festival. We dub ourselves porcupines because it's an animal that's cute and cuddly unless you mess with it, and then you get speared. So it's a different take on the rattlesnake, a little bit less aggressive. So that's PorcFest, the Porcupine Freedom Festival. That's a good point. I encourage you. There's no way that I'm going to be able to communicate to you what it's like up there. If there's one thing you take away, plan a visit now. Just do it. Clear your schedule. The worst that can happen is you spent some time in New Hampshire. We've got PorcFest coming up in June. Next year we'll have Liberty Forum as our winter event, which is PorcFest is a more laid back. We're on a campground, just parties and fun and entertainment. And there are serious discussions, philosophical discussions as well. Don't worry, but it's a summer thing. And then Liberty Forum is our winter event. We're in suits, and it's more academic, though there's also a fair bit of socializing. But even if you can't make it to one of those events, just come up and let us know. And I promise we will roll out the red carpet. Everyone's interested in meeting new people, the new faces that are coming up. And whatever town you're going to be in, there's going to be someone to greet you and show you around and tell you what life is like for them. And they're all volunteers, and it's just an unsurpassable experience. If you find it's not a fit for you, that's fine, and you'll still have a great week. But I think a lot of you, once you visit, will decide that this is a place for you. Your second question was what values we have in common. On behalf of the FSP, I can't enumerate any. But the FSP officially is just a vehicle. So we're just looking for...
Well, you mentioned at PorcFest that there are a lot of fundamental things that you have in common. Just personally.
Well, I'll touch on that, yeah. But just to get it out there, the FSP, some people misunderstand and think we're active in the state. The FSP is just the bus to get what we call liberty-minded individuals to New Hampshire that are activists, and then what they do once they get there is up to them. And that's actually a good thing, because rather than having some monolithic organization that's going to give people orders and tell them what to do, and we all hate that, you just get there and you do your own project. One person, a girl named Amanda Bolden, noticed that we didn't really do any charity projects, so she started something called Shire Sharing, where Liberty people go out and they give backpacks to the homeless. They give people meals if they can't afford Thanksgiving dinner. Something that I really haven't seen a lot of in the Liberty movement, and we talk about it a lot. And they're actually up there doing it, and it's kind of a beautiful thing. There's all sorts of different things you can get involved in, whatever your angle is, whatever your interest is. If you're the entrepreneur, if you're the street activist, whatever you're into. There's a hacker space outside of Nashua, so these guys get together and they tinker and build. I don't know what it is, but but it's cool. As to the shared values, I hope that most people in this room should know generally what I mean by liberty-minded. People have different perspectives on what they want to do with their liberty. But what you can be assured of is that the people that you're meeting respect your right to do it. So, not everyone's going to want to get together with the bongo drums and the plant and do that thing, and not everyone's going to want to put on a blazer and talk in front of a group of people. There's really something for everyone. There's a diverse movement, and it even breaks down somewhat by region. So the Seacoast tends to be a little bit more low-key and family-oriented, as the Lakes region we're talking about. Keene is definitely a heart of civil disobedience activism, sort of take it to the state. Manche and Concord in the center have a lot of political activism. Manchester also has some civil disobedience. So if you come and tour the state, and it's not a big state, the furthest towns are probably Portsmouth and Keene, or 2.5 hours. I mean, there's some towns way up north by the Canadian border, but you can pretty much see all the heartland of the state in one trip if you can take a couple weeks, and you'll find a community that fits for you. But as to what values we all agree on, I know better than to start that discussion.
I've seen many videos of the Ridley report.
Yeah.
And he does this thing where he goes out with open carry and cleans up the street. And I've seen a few confrontations with the police.
Right.
I was wondering if that was, if the police were starting to lighten up a little bit with this whole, because they were trying to clamp on the whole open carry thing.
It really depends on the town. New Hampshire is a very local focused place. And there are some police departments that have gotten frisky with people they identify as free staters. We make a big effort to communicate that once they're in New Hampshire, they were movers with the free state, but they're not free staters. It's not some kind of derogatory bin they can put them in.
So they're still having some issues with some counties?
Absolutely. We have people that are pushing the frontier of liberty right now in America. They're pushing things that we've lost or we've never had, and they're challenging those things. There's going to be confrontations. You're not going to find, if that's not what you want, you're generally not going to find trouble if you're not, trying to make a point.
I'm a firm believer that if you want liberty, you're going to have to fight for it.
Right.
Especially today.
Right.
And that, if you want to, be pothead, you're going to have to fight for that as well. I think there's more uses for hemp than that, but I just was kind of curious to see if the police and the sheriffs and how that was all coming about. If there was any change in that. You guys working on that? It
really does vary. There's some. I think Keene has reached some kind of mutual, understanding on some issues with activists there. On the seacoast where I am, there's just not a lot of direct confrontation like that. That's just not how most people are organizing.
Right.
They're working within their communities to be good neighbors and try to persuade people. And that's why I say, if that's what you want, then it's there for you, and if it's not, you don't have to worry about getting swept up in it. That said, we are living under a government. We're living under the federal government. State government does have issues. They're somewhat strict with liquor. They've got state liquor stores. They still allow beer and wine and other things to be sold elsewhere. There's lots of things to work on.
Yeah, okay.
In any place, but it's much better, especially coming from Manhattan, where it's like
Well, I think Sheriff Mack laid out some great points, and maybe it's time for some free staters to start thinking about the sheriff.
There's a fellow named Bradley Jarvis who's running for sheriff. He was a former police officer until he realized that the bulk of what he was doing he didn't agree with, and he quit. And he's been an activist in the court system, helping to defend people, and he is running for sheriff. So.
Which county?
He's in Dover, right? It's Rockingham County.
Just what's the cost of living like and employment opportunities?
Okay. Unemployment is low, as I mentioned. There's a lot of jobs available. Different parts of the state are different. The seacoast is, I would say, the most expensive. Manchester, where a lot of people end up, is the highest population city. It's about 100,000. It's actually the largest city in northern New England, which is Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire. And they have plenty of job opportunities, and the cost of living is very low in Manchester. It's sort of a city that it was a textile city, and then those industries went away in the country, and so they've been in the process of rebuilding. But it's not the dismal scene that we would see in some places like upstate New York and even parts of Pennsylvania, where because the laws are such that people can form small businesses. So these mills have been reoccupied by hundreds of small businesses. So there's lots of jobs. In fact, If you're interested, and there's a group on Facebook called FSP Job Alert, where constantly posting different opportunities around the state. The only part of the state where you have trouble is if you're going to be way up north. It's just there's not a lot of people, so the opportunities are limited. You sort of have to fit in where you can if you're way up there. But most people stay in the south of the state.
I have a card here for Frank Zabo, who's running for sheriff in New Hampshire. He's in Hillsborough.
Okay. Frank Zabo in Hillsborough. Well, I'll have to look that up.
He's right here today.
Oh, okay. Introduce me. All right. Well, thank you very much. If you have any other questions, come to you. Just come see me, and I'm happy to chat about it.
Mike, we have brochures in the back too.
Oh, yeah. Please, on your way out, we have bookmarks you can take, and if you put down